really great kind of example to set for others. So Francis, thank you for joining us. First of all, tell us about you and tell us about your career journey.
Well, thanks very much, Daryl, and hello everybody. What day are we on? You kind of lose the day of the week, don't you? And even what month we're in, but it's Thursday, so we're nearly there. I've known Vicky for a number of years now. I was leading the employee solutions business within a global reward and improvement company called Grassroots many years ago. I'm now Director of Organisational Wellbeing at Gallagher. So Gallagher's a 30,000 strong global insurance and risk and consulting firm, and I sit within the Organisational Wellbeing team. And that term all sounds very, what does that mean? Well, it's all about the people. It's all about improving the well-being of people in order that the organisation can be well as well. And I'm leading on the financial well-being proposition for Gallagher, which is, as it sounds, really helping people grappling with their personal finances and financial well-being. I'm also on the Pensions Dashboard Steering Group. So this is a government steering group focused on pensions dashboards, which is launched by the Department of Work and Pensions. And it's the government is just putting through the Pensions Dashboard Bill right now. It's going through Parliament. And essentially it will give everybody the ability to see all of their pensions in one place. So the estimate is there's about £50 billion worth of lost pensions in the UK. And these might be very small pots of DC pots where somebody was in a company for 2 months and doesn't realise it's there. So Dashboards is a UK-wide programme which is going to be launching the ability to everybody to see their pensions. I'm also on the board of Engage for Success, which is a UK task force focused on employee engagement. And David McLeod was commissioned by the then government 12 years ago now to write a report on employee engagement to essentially understand why the UK was trailing behind other G7 countries in employee engagement, why we had consistently low levels of employee engagement, and what we could do to learn from organisations in the UK that had higher levels of employee engagement to really raise the bar of employee engagement in the UK. The task force was one of the recommendations that came out of the government report, and the task force was launched at number 10. By the then Prime Minister David Cameron, so that tells you how long ago that was. And essentially the task force is all about raising the profile of engagement and shining a light on best practice. There is a fantastic website called engageforsuccess.org, with a huge amount of content, case studies, but more importantly, tips, ideas on how to improve engagement, whether you're a small startup or whether you're a large corporate. What are the key priorities and tips that you can apply to improve the well-being and engagement of your people. So that's a kind of potted tour of what I'm doing currently. I began my career many years ago at British Airways. I was privileged to be on a graduate training scheme there. I still have a model Concorde behind me that I picked up when I was at BA. In fact, that was the days when you could actually walk onto Concorde. I was based in a hangar that was, I was working with the IT department at British Airways as a business analyst graduate trainee. And we had to walk past all of the planes in the engineering department before going up to our offices. And this was before 9/11, where we were allowed just to wander onto the aeroplanes and just speak to the engineers. And I remember Concorde, before it was retired, was in one of the hangars. I was able to walk onto Concorde and walk up and down. It's my only claim to fame of being on Concorde. It wasn't actually in the air. But what struck me is how small it is. And so BA had a policy of only hiring the shorter cabin crew to be on Concorde, so that it wouldn't accentuate how small the cabin is. But it's just like one big cigar that you sit down. But yeah, so with British Airways for a number of years. Then I cut my teeth in sales. So I thought, I don't want my career to be in IT long term. It's great to have had a brilliant training program there at BA, but I saw the career path and I couldn't see myself that passionate about technology such that I would continue that long term. So I thought, I will try this role of business development. And there was a small company called Cape Consulting that was focusing on customer service consultancy, and they were looking for a business development manager. And I remember the day when I arrived at the business and I was put in a room with a yellow pages and told to make some phone calls. And it was that was prospecting. And so I learned that I could actually pick up the phone and have conversations with people, manage to sell business into the likes of London Underground and other large organisations where they were looking to improve their customer experience. Then I joined Grassroots, so I was heading up the employee solutions team within Grassroots. Now, Grassroots has since been sold to Blackhawk Networks. I think it was at the time about 365 million turnover business. And Grassroots was all focused on improving performance of people by rewarding them well, by giving them great benefits, but also by giving them great recognition. So peer-to-peer recognition, be it a simple voucher scheme where you give somebody a voucher. In fact, Asda were even giving people 10 minutes early on shift as a scratch card. So really practical solutions to incentivize staff, right through to your kind of large corporate recognition programs, cycle scheme, employee benefits programs as well. And Grassroots also focused a lot on the topic of mystery shopping. So going out and understanding what the level of experience that customers are receiving. And so that was Grassroots. That's, I think, Vicky, where we met. And in fact, you hosted an event at the House of Commons and had an MP speaking there on the topic of, you know, performance for SMEs and the importance of people motivation as well. So Grassroots then sold to Blackhawk Networks. I joined a small consultancy focused on retirement savings engagement. Now, what a topic that is. How do you engage a 24-year-old in saving for their future? So what are the means, what are the psychological, behavioural nudges that you can put in front of people that's going to make them decide to save for the future? Because most of us find it very difficult to imagine our future selves. And how can we use creativity and innovation to engage people? So I was at AHG for 3 years. I joined that business to help grow it for sale. And we grew the business. By the time we sold it, it was a 10 million turnover business with offices around the world and 70 plus employees. The founder of the business took redundancy from Mercer about 27 years ago, decided to set up his own communications agency and grew it up to what it was when we sold it to Gallagher last year. So Gallagher were looking to augment their existing fantastic communications capabilities and to link that in with their broader insurance, employee benefits and organisational wellbeing function. So we've brought the AHC expertise, which is pensions and retirements communication, put that in with the benefits communication, the internal communication part as well, to create what is the world's largest communications agency. And now we're continuing to help organisations grapple with the challenge of engaging with their people at this very difficult time and communicating effectively with now very disparate workforces around the UK and around the world. So that's a potted history of where I've been and where I've come from and where I am today, Daryl.
Fantastic. No, thank you, Francis. It's really, really great to hear, and clearly an indication of how many rich stories and lessons we need to draw out of you today, so that we can all learn. I wanted to ask, or bring the topic to sort of employee engagement. I know that's something you're super passionate about, and I'd love to hear a bit more about when you first discovered the phrase employee engagement and how you kind of immersed yourself into it to all the work you've done since.
Yeah, so well, hopefully everyone is familiar with the term employee engagement, and it's one that, you know, is kind of common parlance, certainly in the HR circles now, but I wouldn't say that was the case 10 years ago. I did some work actually for an aerospace company, and it was, I won't say the name of the company, but we were asked to help them improve the employee engagement of their leadership team and then broadly through their whole team. And they told us a story where the founder of the business many years ago, a chairman, used to sit outside the public conveniences or the toilets basically and time people. And that's a true story. And would time people and then kind of look frowningly and say that was a bit long, wasn't it? Now, sorry to be so crude, but that was the reality of some of the cultures that we were dealing with. Now, in terms of engagement and, you know, the impact that has on personal employee engagement, but unfortunately some of that old school approaches was very much going on still 10 years ago. So the first thing that we did is we ran a forum at the Institute of Directors in London, actually. We did it was an afternoon forum, and we invited a whole range of HR leaders into the room. to essentially talk about what their organisation was doing to improve employee engagement, what the barriers were to employee engagement, and what solutions they were finding were working. And there were all sorts of really good information that came out of those round tables. I then reached out to a chap called David McLeod. Now, David was the writer of the Engage for Success report to government and founder of the Taskforce. And I said, David, look, we've got some really interesting anecdotal data here from on the ground as to what organisations are doing to improve the engagement of their people. And David said, I'd really like to have a look at that and feed that into the broader movement. And that's when I was invited to join the UK Taskforce on employee engagement. But just in terms of what is employee engagement, why it matters. So 10 years ago, our objective was to raise the profile of the topic and have it as a serious agenda topic around HR tables. Because we all know about pay and benefit structure and the importance of having our all of the policies in place and recruitment policies and training and development. We all know that's got to be there. But employee engagement, engaging our people, well, some views they're lucky to have a job. Why do we need to engage them? We've given them employment, we give them a salary, we give them the equipment they need to do their job well. Why does it matter that we create an environment in which they're engaged? And again, that was the view of some leaders. So what we did is the HR director of M&S at the time, Tanith Dodge, she led on a study which was commissioned by the University of Bath that put together the actual business case for employee engagement. So it actually evidenced the impact on productivity, the impact on absenteeism. Interestingly, the NHS trusts with higher levels of employee engagement had lower mortality rates. The increase in creativity for people who are prepared to go the extra mile and contribute. There were so many really rich data points which evidence that if you achieve higher levels of engagement, where people feel they're bringing their full self to work, where they're feeling valued for the work that they do, and they want to go the extra mile. If you can tap into that magical element of people going that extra and feeling really valued, the exponential increase in organisational well-being and the impact it has. And just to finish, one story that David McLeod always tells is that he was explaining to Peter Mandelson, who was the then business secretary. So Peter Mandelson commissioned the report. You see, it tells you how long ago that was. Now I think he's Lord Mandelson, but he was explaining to Lord Mandelson all about employee engagement, and they were in the Commons or wherever it was. And Peter Mandelson said, I don't get all this employee engagement stuff. What is it all about? Explain it to me, David. And David says, well, it's hard to explain. You can kind of feel it. You can feel if you're in an organisation or a culture where the people are engaged, and you can feel where it isn't. And then Peter said, actually, I went to the supermarket the other day, and I asked this chap where the pickle was, and in one instance, the person can just say it's over there, or they won't even know, or they kind of look at you blankly. But this chap took me to the pickle and then explained the range of pickles that were available to me. And it was a really simple example of how that engaged employee impacted Peter's experience of shopping in that store, his view of the brand that he was dealing with, and his overall sense of that was a good experience. Just that one person deciding to say, you matter as a customer, I bother. Now that's because that person's being managed well. The culture in that organisation is such that they felt they wanted to do that. And, they feel that even if I wasn't rewarded for it, I'm glad I did that. So I think there's a really nice anecdote of the difference between a disengaged or kind of level engagement and then peak employee engagement and the impact that has on people. And thankfully, just to finish, we're now in a place where it's a given. The Engage for Success website receives thousands of hits every day globally, with people downloading resources, content, business cases, examples, hints and tips. It's a movement now that has got large brands and small engaged in it, and it's here. So we're just about to hit our 10-year anniversary, and we're really excited about whatever government's view is. Currently, government is very supportive of engaged workforce, and even more so now as we hit these tricky times that we're in currently.
That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Francis, and love a good story as well, which I'm sure everyone can resonate with. If I was that customer that got that great experience there, that would probably help determine why I won't go and spread my shopping across different supermarkets, and then I'll just stick to that one until their service quality perhaps declines. So if you think about how that can affect long-term customer value and customer spend, I think we can apply that to any business. And I'll just throw in a different example as well, actually, that might help everyone relate to that story that you shared, Francis. And it's like simple things like when we send someone an email, whether that's a customer, a supplier, a colleague, or even a WhatsApp message. I know that's been brought into a lot of businesses now, but how many times, because we're perhaps in a rush, do you send a message where you don't even ask, it's someone you haven't spoken to for a few days, and you don't open it with any pleasantries. It's just, hi, do you know the answer to this, or can you help with this? Not, how are you today? How was your weekend? And just a bit of small talk. And if everyone starts doing more of that, even something so simple like that can have a massive impact on how colleagues and employees feel. And then if they're doing that to their customers, your customers start to feel that as well. And that feels like a warmer place to do business with. So it's just trying to give a different context of the importance of engagement. I think that's what you said was fantastic, Francis. So thank you for that. What can you think of the best? I mean, that's a really good example, but can you think of another example or best practice of the best activity you've seen one of your companies or another company do to help support and drive employee engagement? And what's the best thing that stands out for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, because there are so many initiatives that organisations can do to improve engagement. I just going back to your point, there's one thing David McLeod again always says, is that we're not human resources, we're human beings. And I know the term HR is banded and everyone gets that right, but so often it's about the importance of treating people as human beings. And the other point to mention is it's not soft, fluffy stuff. I really don't value that term when people start going down that route. Actually, it can be more effort and more challenging to treat people in that way than it is just to be, treat people as resources. But just in answer to your question, let me just give you very quickly some 4 tips of, these are consistent themes which all organisations that have high levels of employee engagement achieve, and they're the 4 elements that were in the McLeod report. And a lot of organisations base their employee engagement strategy on these 4 pillars of employee engagement. So, and they apply, be it a small company or a large company, wherever you are, even if it's 2 of you in the organisation, if you get these 4 things in play, that will help. The first one is strategic narrative, where we've been, where we are today, where we're going. Last week, the week before last, Gallagher, we had our 500 people all join a call where the CEO and the leadership team were visioning us with the strategic narrative of the business, where we're going in 2021 and beyond, and where we've been and where we are today. And that sense of strategic narrative, and we've all heard the story of sending the spaceman to the moon and the NASA person sweeping, but I heard a recent example of a construction company, and they were trying to engage with their people, and they were finding that motivation levels were relatively low amongst those employees, and they did a whole session to engage them with their strategic narrative. And these people at the time they were building a school, and so they took them away from you're building a school piece as in you're just putting bricks in, to you are helping the education of future generations. And that became the narrative that every person on that construction site was suddenly engaged with, and the impact that had on their productivity, their sense of purpose. So the first thing is align people with that sense of purpose. That's a really key part of the employee engagement story, and make sure your leaders are very clear as to why we're doing this. In the great book by Simon Sinek, the why, we'll start with why are we doing this. The second part is critical, is engaging managers. So these are managers that engage, they set goals, they manage, they coach, they discipline. One of the biggest drivers of disengagement is when employees see poor performance not being dealt with by managers. Consistently, one of the biggest drivers of disengagement is when people know people are getting away with stuff, but their managers aren't picking up on it. So part of the key is have engaging managers that are aligned to the strategic narrative, but know how to lead and manage. Oftentimes, unfortunately, people are promoted into management roles because they're great salespeople or because they're great technologists, but they have no emotional intelligence whatsoever. I'm sure some of us have experienced that. You've got to make sure your manager's equipped to lead and to manage people and not manage resources. The third thing is employee voice, critical. Any organizations that have high level of employee engagement have high level of employee voice. And employee voice is all about listening to your people and then acting on it. There's nothing worse than doing an employee survey. Thank you all for your feedback, and then people seeing no change. So employee voice being it pulse surveys, not the annual survey, because that was out of date by the time you've even got the data.
Yep.
But what can you do? We did a simple exercise of dropping your post-it notes into a box at grassroots, anonymously, unless we get handwriting experts in, which we didn't, but anonymously drop your comments in a box. And actually the impact that had on Wellbeing, we then got all the leadership team in a room and we just went through the questions. That's a great example of employee voice, and it was like, when are you going to sort the toilets out? Literally things like that, why can't we have enough coffee? But if these things matter to your people, you've got to listen. And the final thing is integrity. The classic, we want to be the greenest company in our industry by 2024, and there's black general waste bins all around the office. The say-do gap, making sure that, your leaders lead with integrity. A biggest driver again of disengagement is when there is that lack of integrity from leadership. And so those four key things are consistently in organizations with high levels of engagement, and any initiatives that focus on those four key things are going to help to drive engagement. And we've seen some really practical outworkings of that, where, for example, an organization has said, we're going to have an employee recognition program that's linked to our values, because our values are really important, but we want to recognize people for delivering against the values. And if value is teamwork, collaboration, let's recognize that for people. Always a risk with that. There was one instance where we ran an employee recognition program and we were looking through the data with the client, and people were giving each other recognition for unloading the dishwasher. And very difficult to align that to values. And so you got to get it right, and you've got to make sure you're clear on how you're supposed to implement that recognition. But creating a culture of appreciation in an organisation is really key to raising engagement levels.
Fantastic. Yeah, again, great share, Francis. Thank you. I think I'm going to open up the Q&A to everyone shortly. I'm going to ask you one more question first. Sorry to be greedy, everyone. But also just give everyone a bit of time to format their questions if you've thought of them, and just pop them in the chat, either as a message to everyone, and then Vicky will curate those shortly. Or if you feel you prefer to anonymously, just send Vicky a private message in the group chat as well. So that's so we can then read it out as an anonymous question. So my final question, Francis, was kind of turning the attention to the great work you've been doing this year at Gallagher's, actually, and there's obviously loads of that. Again, especially around both employee engagement and financial well-being, and some really positive things you've done in response to COVID. Would you be comfortable to share a few points and successes there that you've done or seen?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. I'll share just a couple of things that we've seen in the way in which Gallagher has responded. You've got 30,000 staff globally. Very soon after the initial hit of COVID, decisions were made to send everybody to work remotely. And talk about stress testing systems and remote working. I've heard one HR leader saying that COVID is a massive stress test of so many things within organizations, and certainly it was a systems stress test as well as a people management stress test. And pleased to say that across the board the business adapted really well to that. But then how do you keep people connected with that? So that was one of the key challenges I'm sure that the leadership team grappled with. After the first week of a lockdown, we were receiving emails from Pat Gallagher with videos from his home talking to the whole business about what was going on. Then we were receiving emails also from our CEO in the UK, from his lounge, from his home office, talking about what was going on. And then we consistently received those every week. So the first thing I'd say is that consistent communication from leadership. Thanks for all that you're doing under these stressful circumstances. The usual stay safe messages, which are critical, usual, making sure no one felt pressured in any way, in terms of the environment that's being created, and that the support was there for people. So those messages came out loud and clear. I think the other piece that we've seen really effective is just the piece around supporting people in their more local teams. So whilst you have the big leadership messages that are really important, creating cultures within local teams to regularly meet up and regularly connect with each other, and using the technology obviously that we have in place to do that, and create an environment where as soon as lockdown was easing, certain offices were opening for those people that were struggling and needing to go back to the workplace, because for a lot of people, working from home isn't such a challenge. For others it's a huge challenge. We don't have the space. You hear a certain situation. I heard one of some accommodation where somebody was having to put a plastic bag over their shower, the shower, and sit in the cubicle to work because someone else, this wasn't at Gallagher, but it's a real situation. Someone else was in the lounge. I've heard someone else in a cupboard with a duvet behind them. That's the reality, end of the bed with an ironing board for some people. So creating an environment where people need to return to the office safely, COVID secure, with the necessary test and trace in place, that's there as well. So making sure that, supporting people working from home, yes, but also those that need to get back to the office. A colleague of mine working from the office, has found it really valuable just having the routine of going back, walking across London Bridge, going back into the office every day. It's done her well-being a huge amount of good. So there's just been a whole range of activities that have gone on. And then we had a big conference last week, which was fantastic as well. So, lots of things going on, but it's challenging, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we can only do our best, and to be as positive and proactive as possible, I say. But again, that's another great share there. So thank you, Francis. You did, I think I saw there was a webinar you guys did. So you've also been doing stuff, not just internally for employees, but you've been putting stuff out there to your community, to your customers. And there was one yesterday on the workforce, sharing best practice on workforce COVID testing. Is that something you could expand on as an example of, how we take engagement and well-being and positive COVID response out into the public domain, as opposed to just internally with staff?
Yeah, so Gallagher's approach has always been partnership, and collaborative partnership with other experts in the field. I believe that the guidelines around how many people in a workforce need to get COVID before it's considered to be an outbreak. I believe it's 2 confirmed cases, and then there's an outbreak in that environment. So managing and testing is significant for the impact of not just those individuals that are being tested and have tested positive, but the whole workplace. Because you have to send everyone home for 14 days, that's a massive impact. So the ability to test and trace in the workplace is critical. So we have partnered with an organisation that has the testing facilities to be able to conduct those tests, antibody tests within the workplace. So it's just an example of being able to very quickly adjust to the reality of the situation for people. We've also launched a whole range of communication tools out. As soon as, in fact, this hit, we launched a communication toolkit for people to launch in their organizations, which would be able to quickly, email templates and posters, etc., so that people could feel equipped to very quickly adjust to the environment. So testing is another example of that. And there'll be other initiatives that we launch, who knows when we're all going to get vaccines. Great news coming through on the vaccines, isn't it? But, is it 20% by June, or 30% or 50%? Who knows when that will be in place such that we can all return to the norm? And then how many organizations are going to? I think that Google and Yahoo have both made decisions to not return to the office. I think other big brands, I know some big conference providers are saying no conferences at all in 2021 at all, live conferences. So, we've still got a long way to go despite all the good news. So it's about how we can make sure we provide support for people in those times.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Francis. You've been very generous by creating time for us today and sharing your wealth of experience and some fantastic insights there. But we're not done there, because there might be some other great questions from our other guests. So I'm going to hand over to Vicky at this point. Vicky, how are we doing with questions?
Well, no one's asking any questions as of yet, but they're probably so engrossed in the interview. I'll give you all time to digest, and I'll ask a question, and then perhaps we can get some inspiration for everyone. So thank you again, Francis. That was really, really interesting. I think we'll all agree you really do know your stuff, that's for sure. What's the future hold for Gallagher? What are you guys looking for at the moment? What's happening in 2021?
I'll talk for the Gallagher Benefit Services business, of which I sit within, and we have a really exciting road ahead, actually, because the whole topic of organisational wellbeing, which is essentially organisations being well because their people are well, is here to stay as an agenda. And there's no doubt that as we come out of this, it's those organisations that have treated people well that will thrive, and those that haven't will have real talent retention challenges, and they'll see those, going into 2021 and beyond. So we as an organisation are focusing on a really simple objective, and that's helping people feel different about work. And when you think about what does that mean, helping people feel different about work, and why do we want people to feel different about work? Well, how are people in your organisation currently feeling about work? How are they currently feeling about going to work every day, going upstairs or into the lounge or whatever? And how can we improve and help people feel different about their work? And it might be that they're feeling different about the benefits that they receive. They feel different about the career progression that they have or the opportunities that they have. It might be that they feel different about their personal finances, because the organisation has put in place a really rich benefits package for us that help us feel different about our personal finances, and they're providing webinars to explain to us more about the pension scheme, because I never understand the pension scheme, I never understood it, but now I'm feeling better or different about that. So for us as an organisation, it's really taking all the skill sets, and we've got some, such a variety. Gallagher's a very acquisitive company. We bought AHC, we bought other communications agencies, risk, health, insurance businesses. So, it's about combining those rich resources together into one consolidated offering to the market. And we're seeing what's really exciting is that the positioning in terms of the culture change in organizations and all of those areas of improvement is resonating really well. But are we there yet? No, we've got a long way to go, as any organization has. To land the narrative really clearly is got to be a key objective, and then to take that narrative out to broader than just our existing clients. But it's exciting to have that clarity around helping people feel different about work and what that looks like.
Fantastic. We just had a question about Engage for Success, but I think Daryl's answered that for Michael. Thank you, Daryl. But let's talk about the government Taskforce in a bit more detail. What is it? What does it actually mean? And why have you been on that for so long, for 10 years?
So the government Taskforce, it's called engageforsuccess.org, by the way. So if anyone wants to have a little browse while I'm talking, I won't be remotely offended. The beauty of being on this is, for all I know, you could have all been shopping for this whole call, and I wouldn't know. Isn't that great? Ordered things on eBay while we're chatting. So if engageforsuccess.org is the website there, and you'll see there a whole range of content on the topic. The reason why the government really was behind this was because they recognised that productivity, is key to the success of government in terms of income tax and having businesses that are thriving. And that's cross-government, right? So whoever, at the time, it was the coalition government that commissioned the report. So, it's whatever government is in place, the focus on improving well-being for people and the workplace is critical. And also just the role of organisations to support each other. One of the amazing things about Engage for Success is I've had forums where you've had the head of HR from Lloyds Banking Group with the head of HR from HSBC and the head of HR from another bank. And they would not normally, they're competitive organisations. But when you talk about the topic of employee engagement, it's good for everybody, right? So there's this common good that people are prepared to let their guard down and actually share initiatives that are going on in their organisations to help the broader people agenda. And just to finish, the term, it's good for the individual, it's good for the organisation, and it's good for the UK. And that's why employee engagement kind of crosses all of those boundaries, from a small SME right up to government talking about it.
Fantastic, thank you. Have we got any questions from anyone? Does anyone want to throw their hat in the ring at all to ask Francis a question? Daryl, back to you.
Not a question as such, but it might. It's a point to make to reinforce something that Francis said, and it might provoke some more conversation. But something I've seen a lot in organisations over the years, both small ones and much larger global corporate ones, is that we're still on a bit of a journey for all organisations to truly do employee engagement and employee wellbeing as best as they can, and for the right reasons. There's still a number of companies that do it as a tick box exercise. Oh, we've got to do something about this employee engagement stuff to look like we care for our staff, and to look like that we care for our customers in the public domain. And I find that disappointing personally, but it is what it is for now. But now, one shift in the last couple of years is we're now blessed with lots of research and studies that emphasise the return on investment that companies can make from properly doing employee engagement and wellbeing, the impact on productivity, staff loyalty, lower recruitment costs, lower staff retraining costs, and many other really positive impacts. So now it's like there's enough evidence to show it's a complete financial no-brainer for people to do this stuff. But even better if we're doing it because we actually care about people. So I just wanted to reinforce that, because that message isn't out everywhere yet. Some companies haven't caught up with that.
We've got a very shy audience today, I must say. So thank you for that, Daryl. Anything else to add, Francis, before we move on to the introductions from you?
No, I'd just say encourage everyone, have a look at Engage for Success if this is an area that you're ever looking at focusing on. And, it's that key thing as we go into 2021, the people agenda is going to be much further up the food chain, I think, than it's ever been. And it's organisations that can really address that well, that will thrive.
Yeah, 100%. Good stuff. Okay, well, thanks for that, guys. We're now going to move on to the next section, which would have been the bit that we did first, but we swapped it.